Okay. So, well, I've been feeling really called to share my story, so that you know how it is that I'm sitting in front of you here today and um, why I feel qualified to do this work and why I know I can help so many people out there because of the things that I myself have been through. So, I'm gonna start where I left off. I did do a part 1 already, so this is gonna be part 2, and we'll just get into it. So part 1 ended off where, my car had broken down, I had lost my wallet. Not broken down, but I ran out of gas. I lost my wallet. I had the first migraine of my life, and basically my dad chased me and my ex-boyfriend out of the house. Um, hold on. Okay. So, my dad had chased me and my ex-boyfriend, off of our property, and I had dropped him off at home, then proceeded to yeah, all those other things happened. A friend had to come and, uh, bring me some gas or take me to the gas station. We got gas together, I can't really remember, but her brother had to drive her because she didn't drive. And it was just like a big freaking disaster, and I was so stressed out that day, and that's why I got my first migraine, and, I also think the migraine was a premonition, if I'm honest. And you'll know why in a second. So, I just kinda stayed away from home for the rest of the day and, like, waited till I knew that they would be asleep. I went to my friend's house, and we, like, smoked weed and, like, I don't know what we did. Maybe, just hung out. But I knew that I didn't wanna see my dad that day, so I was like, "I'm just gonna avoid him." So eventually I went home, like, I think it was probably around 10 PM, um, and, like, I lived behind my dad and stepmom. We had an acre of property around their house, and they actually had bought me, a fifth wheel for me to live in, and I was living back there and paying rent and everything. And so I go up to my fifth wheel, and that's where my dad had saw me and my boyfriend running out of there and to my car, and then we took off. And my dad hated this boyfriend, he really did, because he really wasn't good for me, he was, like, in and out of jail all the time, he was doing drugs, he was a bad influence, okay? And, I mean, I probably would have sought that stuff out regardless of this person, but anyways. So so I get home and I go up to the fifth wheel and the door is boarded shut. I mean, like, nails and boards, like, boarded shut, okay? I cannot get in there unless I had, like, some tools, which I didn't have. So I go into the house because I still have the key for the house, and, um for whatever reason, I was really pissed off. I mean, I knew that he was really pissed off, but I was also really pissed off, and I especially because the whole reason my dad was really upset was because he probably thought I got high on speed, and I didn't. I did not do that, and so that's kinda, like, where I felt like you boarded at my house, and I didn't even do the one thing, that I'm supposed to be doing. Yes, I saw my ex-boyfriend, but, feelings don't just, like, end like that, right? So, I was just feeling kind of, I guess, entitled, you could use that word, or just, like, pissed off in my own right, and so I go into my house, my old room is, like, empty, there's no blankets or anything like that on my bed, it's just a blank mattress, right? Or mattress pad. So I knock on my dad and my stepmom's door, and I was I was gonna ask them where all the blankets were and stuff because that house was like, everything was always put away. There was, like legit, like probably didn't even know where that stuff was kept. Because my stepmom was just like very neat and very organized. Everything had a place. And like I never really went like digging into what's in the closets and like, stuff like that. So but it was also a way for me to sort of provoke my dad and let him know like, hey, I'm pissed off too, you know. And so I knocked on the door and he opened the door and he hit me straight in the face, close fisted. And that was a big shock to me. My dad had never hit me like that. I had been spanked, but I had never been hit like with a closed fist before in my life. And so I'm shocked. I'm just like backing up, and he is grabbing me and taking me to that bed where there's just the mattress pad, and he's pinning me down, and he, is continuing to hit me with the closed fist in my fucking face. And I am just like, immediately go into fight or flight or, survival mode. And, I'm just like shocked and like a deer in the headlights, right? Like, and, he had me pinned down like this, like his knees were on my, it's making me emotional. His knees were on my arms, and he was hitting me with his hands, and I was just, what could I do? So I smoked cigarettes at that point in time in my life, and my dad hated, hated, hated that I smoked cigarettes. And my cigarettes fell out of my pocket, like my sweatshirt pocket or whatever I was wearing, and he shoved the whole pack in my mouth, and like the cigarettes like broke open and they were burning my throat and like my nose, and they were just like, it was a lot happening. And he just kept hitting me, and he like was in um he was like possessed, really. Like I never had seen the side of my dad except for once when I was a small girl. And he grabbed my mom by her hair in, like, a really threatening way, and when he was really drunk, and maybe he was really drunk that night, I don't know, but he would just hitting me and repeating over and over again, "Are you dishing me?" And, like, I had never even heard anyone say that to me before, or, like, that turn of phrase, and I don't know what I was saying back, it doesn't matter. And I'll just never forget that burning of the cigarettes, like, in my throat, and, you just go numb when something like that is happening to you, like, to the physical pain that for whatever reason, like, the burning of my throat and everything was just, like, really intense. And, we exchanged some harsh words with each other. I told him something along the lines of, "You hate me because I'm like my mother, and, you left us," and I don't I don't really remember, but it was something along those lines, and I was, like, just even though I was, like, not in my body and I was checked out, I was so disgusted with him in this moment that I literally, um, spit in his face because that was all I could do to fight back in that moment. Like, that was my only thing that I could do because 'cause I'm literally pinned down. My dad's, like, obviously twice the size of me, and that was all I could do, was spit in his face and let him know, like, "Fuck you." So I did, and, that did not make him calm down any, as you can imagine. So, this just went on and on and on and on, and I really thought I might die. I really thought I might die that night, but I didn't, and he stopped, and, eventually, and it felt like it was, like, an hour, but it was probably just a matter of, like, I don't know, 10, 20 minutes. I don't really know. Uh, Seemed like it was forever. Um, and then he left the room, and I fell down on the floor, and I just started crying, and I just started crying. I felt like I lost my dad, and you know, like, you have this idea of who your parents are, and, that can all be shattered in an instant. It really can't. So, I was just, like, was crying on the floor, and, you know, I thought that I really thought that he was gonna kill me, because when your nervous system kicks on like that, you aren't thinking rationally, and honestly, even if I was thinking rationally, like, that would have been a rational thought at that moment, because my face was gonna be, like, mangled, and, like, how was he ever gonna, like, hide me? Like, we lived in such a small town. Everybody knew everybody's business. Like, how was this gonna be hidden from everyone? Because I'm sure he didn't want this, like, whatever. Anyways, this is, like, what I'm thinking as an 18-year-old experiencing this. And, so I decided that I'm gonna jump out the window and run away and call my mom. And so, that's all I could think, really. Like, when I think back to that moment, I was just like, this is gonna be over at some point. I'm gonna call my mom and everything's gonna be okay. She's gonna come and get me. We lived like 3 hours apart, but I just kept thinking that, that was like the one thing that was kind of like soothing me at that moment, was like, if it's gonna be over, I'm gonna call her. She's gonna come and get me. And like, I don't need to be around him anymore. So I jumped out the fucking window. I jumped out the window, and I ran through our backyard to the back gate. And so, like, we had the original lot fenced in to keep our dogs in, and then outside of that was the acre around the property that they had bought up slowly. So I ran outside of that first gate, and probably should have figured out that I was gonna cry. Um, don't have any tissues. So sorry, this is all jumbled up. I'm kind of having to go back there to talk about it. So I ran outside of the, like, property gate, and then I ran outside of the larger acreage property gate, and I was running, and I should mention to you that this is a town where there's no streetlights. This is like a country town, okay, in like Central Coast California. So literally, I couldn't see shit except like there were houses far off in the distance with lights, you know? Um, and I mean, they weren't that far away. I don't want to give you the impression that I had to run like a half a mile, but maybe like a quarter mile to find the next house. Um, and to go through our acre and so on and so forth. So, and it also, as I'm running, I'm noticing that um, my left eye is like everything's mixed up. Like my vision is fucked. And so my sort of sense of like where things were and stuff was all messed up and mixed up, and I kid you not, I felt like I was in a scary movie and he was chasing after me and like he was gonna kill me. And I was running through, you know, basically, just like rural land, like where there's so many trees there. So it was just like through trees and tree stumps and stepping on pine cones and like all this stuff. And I'm running and like my vision's all messed up and I can't even mentally process like that. I just kept saying in my head, I'm gonna call my mom, everything's gonna be okay. I'm gonna call my mom, everything's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. She's gonna come and get me right now. She's gonna leave her house right now. She'll be here in 3 hours. And so I go to this neighbor and they see me and they see, right away when they open the door. And I don't know these people. These were neighbors I never knew. They open the door, they let me in. They could see that something had happened. I asked them if I could call my mother or, call a friend. And they said, yes, come in. They were like freaked out. And I was freaked out. And so I called my mom. I finally get to that moment that I was like, "Okay, if I can just get to this moment, everything's gonna be okay somehow, some way, somehow," Like, I just wanna hear someone tell me it's gonna be okay at this point. But see, I have to give a little backstory here because the whole reason that I lived apart from my mom at that time of my life was because in her eyes, I was, like, messing up because I was trying drugs, I was partying a lot. So that's why she sent me to live with my dad, was because she felt like she was losing control of me and she was really angry at me for having to send me away and for what I was doing. So so when I called her, I told her what happened. I said, my dad hit me. I don't remember, right? Like this is such a profound moment, but I can't remember the exact words I used, but I said that he beat me up. And she said back to me, and I quote, "I hope he knocked some sense into you." So you can imagine that that wasn't what I wanted to hear at that moment. And I felt like I had just lost both of my parents in an hour. Not physically, but, the emotional sense, yes. Right? Because how can you respond to someone who is crying on the phone, calling you from a neighbor's house, you know, telling her what happened? How can you respond with that? But, you know, my mom was angry with me. I'm not making excuses for her because it was intended to be hurtful as well because she was angry with me and she can be very emotionally immature. And she had her own physical altercations with my father. So, I guess to her that on some level, that was like accepted, normal. Like she's just hoping that it was gonna like change what I was doing as far as drugs and partying, right? So I don't know what I did, but I think I reacted to obviously what she said, and I'm not really sure where it went from there, the conversation, but I ended up calling a friend. Her and her mom, that same friend that helped me get gas in my truck earlier, her and her mom came and picked me up, and I went to her house again. And, they were just doing their best to take care of me, like, they were just, like everyone like, I think that was the scariest part of that night was just, like, everyone's reaction to what I looked like because, like, my face was all messed up like, it's kind of scary when no one knows what to say to you, when no one knows how to react to what just happened to you, like, that makes it scarier. So, um and I think that's why I had such a bad migraine that day. It was like a premonition. Obviously, my head was starting worse now. And, my friend and her mom were genuinely worried that I might have a concussion. So they called the ambulance. And like, this is a really small town, as I mentioned before. So there's no ambulance like down the street. The ambulance had to come from like 30, 40 minutes away to get to us. And we just waited, for that, and I called the ex-boyfriend and I told him and, it was like no one was reacting appropriately. I mean, my friend and her mom were, but, I guess, but, like, no one was really, like, saying, like, "Wow, like, this is really fucked up what happened, like, what can I do to make you feel better in this moment?" I didn't get that, I didn't get it from my mom, I didn't get it from my boyfriend, and my friend and her mom were, like, scared, I don't think that they had the capacity to do that for me. And the night is, like a lot of it is a blur except for these, like, really pivotal moments, and so, eventually, the ambulance got there. They took me to the hospital, which was 30, 40 minutes away back where they came from, and they took me to have an MRI to know if I had a concussion or any other injuries, and I'll never forget that the guy doing the MRI was, like, getting so annoyed with me because I couldn't stay still because I just, like, kept crying and, like, getting really upset, and, like, my breath and everything was really making it hard for me to sit still, and I was just like, "You think this guy would have more compassion, for someone who's clearly just, like" I don't know, I guess he didn't know what happened to me, but whether it was a car accident or, like, someone else beat me up, not necessarily my dad, like, you should still be a little bit nicer, to people in that state. So, anyways, the next day, my mom came and, when she saw the extent, she really was apologetic about what she said, and she didn't realize that it was to that extent what had happened. So to her credit, I just don't think she understood. Um, I did have a fracture in my occipital I did have a fracture in my occipital lobe, a hairline fracture. You don't do anything for that, but, uh, that's why I guess, like, my vision was messed up on that side. I did look really bad. It was all black and blue, like really swollen. Um, I do have pictures that I don't necessarily want to show anyone, but I do have them. And we had to have them because I did end up calling the police and pressing charges against my dad because it's just like you don't do that, you know? And that's a whole other story, that's a whole other part of this story that I don't think I'm gonna get into tonight. But basically, my mom took me back to Long Beach where I had lived, um, with her before I had moved to my father's house. And yeah, I just took the time to kinda heal my face. I mean, I say I took the time to heal my face, but, like, really my main focus at that point was, like, getting, really fucked up because I did not want to deal with or process what had just happened, and yeah, I'll just get into the next part of the story next time, but, it was a really, um, pivotal night in my life, and, it really changed who I am and how I look at the world, and it's something that I've been working on healing for a long time, you know, ever since it happened, and that was, like, 2003, somewhere around there, 2004. So, it's been a long time that I've been healing this one particular night, this one particular thing that happened to me, but as you can see, it was, like, very, very, profound and disruptive to my nervous system, and I think it's an important part of my story that people should know, and I don't wanna let shame or the idea of tarnishing my father's name hold me back from telling the fucking truth about what happened, because that is what happened to me, and I deserve to tell my story and to have people know what happened. So, that's it for right now. I'll get into the next part, uh, sometime soon, and, yeah, there's a lot more. This is just scratching the surface, so see you next time.